Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking with a guest who's had almost a quarter of a century helping people uncover the authentic who they are. His book is called Journey to You. It's a step-by-step guide to becoming who you were born to be. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Mr. Steve Olsher. Steve, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
I appreciate you having me on. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Now, tell us how your journey got started here in self-discovery.
Well, it's a long journey, like most of ours, and lifelong entrepreneur, just involved with a number of different things over the years, from nightclubs and catalogs and .coms and real estate to you name it. Pretty much from the time I could pick up a rake and try to move a leaf around, I was in the business of trying to make a dollar or two, just inherent to who I am. I guess you could say we're all wired in very specific ways, and always had the entrepreneurial blood. So it's parlayed over the years here to really just pursuing that which I'm compelled to do. And ultimately, we all have to heed that call, and whether or not we heed that call ultimately spells a difference between satisfaction, contentment, fulfillment, and happiness, and just kind of, or just kind of meandering through life, never really getting to where it is that we are all predestined to go. And so my work now has, and over the years now, has involved working with people in transition and really trying to help those who are going from high school to college, college to the workplace, military to civilian life, recently retired, recently fired, etc. Really just try to understand and nail, have a clear plan of action for what's next. And as the host of Reinvention Radio and the founder of the Reinvention Workshop, and as an author, I get a chance to work with lots of different people in lots of different ways, and it's fulfilling.
Now, as I was mentioning earlier in the program, we're looking at more than almost a quarter of a century of you on your journey here, sharing with others. Now, what have you seen to be the consistency, if any, that caused people to get off track, away from their authenticity?
Well, really, it's called life. And what happens is we get caught up in our duties and our responsibilities and doing what we think is the right thing at the time, even though it may be very much the wrong thing for us personally. And life gets in the way. John Lennon says life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And so as we make those other plans, it's really easy to get off focus. And far too many of us start that slide, and once you put the grease on your own boots, it's pretty hard to regain traction.
Well, that certainly makes sense there. I mean, we spend the first, 12 years of our lives basically in institutions that tell us making mistakes are no good. So then we spend the next 10 years or more, and in some cases people a whole lifetime, trying to find ways to please other people and finding ourselves sometimes quite miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reality is, for some of us, we have to hit that bottom until we say, look, enough's enough, and there's got to be something more for me to do in this world than I'm doing now. Or, you just kind of trickle through it, and hopefully you just don't get to the point where you hit your deathbed with that greatest symphony still in your head, as they say. It's different for each person, but the earlier you can figure out what path to take, obviously the better off you'll be, but it's never too late to do it. That's the bottom line.
Now, it's funny because this day, especially at this particular time, there are people that are actually finding themselves out of their careers that they had spent a long time trying to get into, or they're losing jobs or homes because of a very poor recession. But this, you say, is a perfect time to reinvent yourself. First of all, talk about what reinventing is and why this would be a good time to do that.
Well, from my way of thinking, the term at this point is a little bit cliche. When Burger King starts talking about reinventing the hamburger, it's probably time to maybe head in a different direction.
Or when you bring Burger King up, there's a good reason for reinventing the hamburger.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, for me, reinvention is really nothing more than, it's not changing who you are. It's really just about becoming who you inherently are. And so that to me is reinvention. When you just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take the time to really listen to who I am. I'm going to take the time to pursue that which I find most appealing, which I find most fulfilling, and start pursuing that with reckless abandon. And it doesn't mean quit your day job. I'm not telling people to be stupid. I'm not. We all have responsibilities, as I said before, mouths to pay. Bills to pay, mouths to feed. But you do have to have a clear understanding of where it is that you're headed and what that end point is for you. That it certainly just bring you a lot more joy and fulfillment. But why is this the perfect time? Well, anytime you've got an economic downturn, opportunities just abound. Mm-hmm. And what most people don't recognize is that more money was made over the course of our society in downtimes than has ever been made in good times. And the reason is this. Number one, people understand, who take advantage of these downtimes, understand that there is so much money waiting on the sidelines. There's tons of money waiting there for people who have good ideas, whether it's an angel investor or whether it's a bank. I mean, sometimes banks, they got us into this mess, and they're getting a lot of pressure to get us out of this mess. Mm-hmm. And so the idea really is that if you've got an idea that makes sense, if you've got something that other people would find interesting and compelling, get on your soapbox and start talking to people about it, because money is more widely available than you think. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, resources. You can buy things so much cheaper when the times are bad. I mean, look at computers. Computers are a perfect example, and plasma TVs and all that stuff. I mean, it's like, God, just a couple of years ago, prices were double. And it's like, sure, certain things go up, like commodities like milk and eggs and cheese, but when you look at some of the resources that you need to build a business, like computers, like phones, all of these things that make your life easier so you can do things better, faster, smarter, the prices on those resources have come so far down that in some cases it's almost like, well, how can't you move forward in this powerful way with this new technology? Mm-hmm. And then number three, labor. During downtimes, labor is just terribly cheap. When you look at people that when times were good, they were making $100,000, $150,000, or whatever it is, and now they're like, man, just pay me $40,000, $50,000 and sign me up. It's like, okay, well, were they worth $100,000, $150,000, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago? Well, I mean, that's debatable, but certainly you can do things a whole lot more inexpensively now and still get some really solid talent, to help you with whatever it is that you have in mind. So it's definitely an opportunity, and it's certainly the big fat silver lining of this recession that a lot of people forget about.
Mm-hmm. Steve, as you were describing that, I was reminded of people who come to me from time to time, and they'll say, I've got this idea, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Well, what I think you should do is implement it. Well, no, listen to me. It doesn't matter whether it succeeds or fails. What matters is when you implement the idea, you'll begin to see the world through a different set of eyes. And as you talk about in your book, that's a good step for retraining your brain in the way that you think.
Absolutely. And let's just clarify something. I mean, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is one of those terms that weak-minded people just throw around at those who dare to soar in an attempt to bring them down. I mean, if you give something a try and it doesn't work, it just means it didn't work. It doesn't mean you're not a failure. You didn't do anything wrong. You just did the best you could, and it didn't work. It just wasn't meant to be or whatever. But at the same time, when you look back on your life, you will regret failing to act more often than taking action and realizing failure, hands down. And so, like you said, once you're in motion, amazing things happen. And, look, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so you have to keep growing. You have to keep moving, because in that movement, you create motion. And in that motion, you create evolution. And that continual evolution is where you you hone your skills. You get to the point where you're comfortable with doing things that before you would never take on, because it's all about repetition, and comfort comes with repetition.
Now, you talk about a practice called Yano. Tell us about that one there.
Yeah, well, that's going to be one of those tricky ones where I think I'm going to have to stand next to each reader and give them the pronunciation of this thing. But what I mean for it to say, which obviously it's not coming across very well as, is Yano. And so the idea of these Yano moments, which is one of the 7 life-altering principles that I introduce people to in the book Journey to You, it's really about recognizing when you're faced with a moment of truth. And that moment of truth basically is a fork in the road. And is just kind of a fancy way of saying yes, no. And the idea here is you want to make choices that support who it is that you want to be and support you in your journey of doing things that are most nourishing for your soul. And the idea here is to really look at every moment as a yay-no moment, because it's whether, it's how you sit, it's how you breathe, it's how you talk to people. Whatever it is, you're always faced with a yay-no moment. Now, some of these moments obviously will be huge, like someone asking you to get married. Well, that's a huge yay-no moment. I mean, clearly you're given a choice. Yes, I'll get married, or no, you won't. I mean, that's fairly obvious. But the more you can line up those choices with being congruent to who you are and what it is that you really want to get out of life, the better off you're certainly going to be. And I encourage people not even to blow past any single moment in which they're moving in a way that's incongruent with who they are. I mean, it can be something as simple as someone calls you, and you say, you know what, I'm kind of tied up right now, but let me call you back. Well, that was a yay-no moment. And so you tied yourself to that person. You said, I'm going to call you back. So now your integrity is at stake. Now your word is at stake. Mm-hmm. So if you have no, integrity, then it doesn't matter. You're not going to call that person back, and you're not going to care. But if you do, then another way to handle it would be say, okay, well, here's a yay-no moment. I can't talk right now. So maybe what I can say is, you know what? I really have nothing to say. When something exciting happens, I'll call you. That's a much different experience than saying, hey, you know what? I'm kind of busy right now, but let me call you back. You know what I'm saying? That's a yay-no moment. And so some of them are really blatantly obvious, again, like a marriage proposal. And others are not so blatantly obvious, like deciding, let me go ahead and give you a call back in a bit. So what I encourage people to do is really take control of those forks in the road and start to get those to align in a way that really does support who it is that they want to become.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the suggestions you give in the book, and I've actually seen this pretty consistently, is that as you discover what it is that you want to do or who you want to be, step in the direction of others that have done the same, that have been highly successful. Why is that an important step, do you think?
Yeah, Machiavelli said, a prudent person shall always follow in the footsteps of greatness and imitate those who have been outstanding. While I certainly support that, and imitation is without a doubt the sincerest form of flattery, if you can replicate the actions and embody the character traits of those who have been successful, especially those who have been successful in what it is that you want to do, that's simply brilliant. And Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. And I wholeheartedly believe that, because what we're finding now in this information age more than anything is that if you can teach someone the shortcuts, or if you can follow the shortcuts of someone else and shorten that learning curve to get from where it is now to where it is that you really want to go, that's of immense value, not only to you but to others that you might share that information with. So I highly encourage people to emulate those who have been outstanding and who have done things in their space that they are very much interested in doing. And I got to tell you, with the way technology is now, I don't care what it is that you want to do. There's someone out there who's already doing it, and they're sharing a whole bunch of free information online, whether it be a free book, a free newsletter, a free DVD, whatever it might be, a blog, a Twitter, I don't care. Someone is going to teach you how to do it, period, because that's just the way that our society is right now, and you need to take full advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. Many years ago, as I was getting into radio, in fact, I began to call people that you would call esteemed colleagues, if you will, and I said, I'm just kind of interested in doing a little information interview, kind of getting a feel for people who have been in the business and, how they went about it. And what I found consistently, and I'm saying this for the listeners out there, the benefit of the listeners, is that every single time they said, please give me a call if there's anything I can do for you. It's amazing that if you have a goal in mind or whatever it is you want to do, that if you step in the realm of people who, as you said, are already doing it, you'll be amazed at how much help is actually available out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. again, we get kind of caught up in this whole social media thing, which bugs the crap out of me, because it's like it's made us so very insulated that I think people forget the power of really just interacting with the world. And so, from where I stand, if you've got a soapbox to stand on, and you've got something that you really want to talk about, and you have something that you're passionate, about, and you want to share that with others, you've got to start getting in front of people. And you've got to start just talking about what it is that you want to pursue and what it is that really inspires you to really till you're blue in the face. I mean, your friends should be so tired of hearing you talk about this particular subject they're sleeping. So that's really the idea here, is get yourself out of that insulative environment of social media and email and all that stuff, and just get out and start talking to people about what it is that you really want to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's really important, it sounds like, because it puts you in a realm that now you're forced to take action.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because too often, we handcuff ourselves. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's kind of like you want me to drive to the store to pick up a gallon of milk, but my hands are tied behind my back. I can't, I'm not going to be able to do that. And it's like, look, that's the reality of how you grow your business, or how you grow, something that you're passionate about into something that's meaningful. Is you got to cut the cuffs, cut those cuffs off, because you have to get out of your current comfort zone and get in front of people and share with them what it is that you want to do.
Just recently, a friend of mine actually took on an intern who was finishing their final year of college. And one of the areas that this person wanted to work in was media. So my friend has been giving a lot of different assignments that apparently colleges just aren't giving students who want to go into the realm of media for some reason. But one of the things that was brought up to me is that this young intern had said, well, one thing I know that I don't like is that I don't want to do is public relations work. And I said, really? I said, what you had to do as an assignment for this person then is make them write down the 10 or 20 reasons they think they don't want to do this. And I said, most of the time, people generally, if they don't like doing something that's new, it's because it's new and it stretches them. And to find out a little bit more about that little self-discovery. And in your book, you actually give exercises where people begin to unearth those things that are inside of them.
I do. And so look, there's two different ways to look at this from an exercise standpoint as far as the first section of the book that you're talking about, which is establish the foundation. And what I encourage people to do is really try to bring to the surface not only those areas of their life that really kind of slows them down and areas where they lag, but also identify areas of their life where they excel. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, you want as much of your life to be focused on that which you enjoy and that which you're naturally compelled to do. And we have a habit of concentrating on everything that's wrong in the world as opposed to everything that's right. And so there's plenty of self-help books and that sort of thing out there that really focus on, your childhood and unearthing this or unearthing that. And, and I can see the value of that to some extent. But ultimately, what I really encourage people to do is identify what it is that they are limited by, these self-imposed limitations that they put in place. Because ultimately, the farther you can stretch those self-imposed limitations that you knowingly or unknowingly have in place, the more fulfillment you'll realize. But also, the more you can concentrate on those areas of your life where you are naturally wired to excel, certainly the more fulfillment you'll realize. That's a proven fact. So, I absolutely, I try to get people clear on, how do we get out of this mindset of operating within a particular just restricted circle of our potential self. It's one of the exercises that I ask people to think about is, if someone that you love, dearly love, like this is the person you love most in the world, is dying of a rare disease. And I ask this question in my workshop, the reinvention workshop, as well with the participants there. I say, look, you've got $25 in the bank, and this disease is going to kill this person you love. But you Google this disease, and you find some guy in the Peruvian jungle who's got the cure. And it's like a vial, one little vial, but that vial's going to cost you, $500,000. And like I said, you got $25 to your name. And by a show of hands, I ask them to raise their hand and say, look, This is the person you love more than anyone else in the world, who, in this room, within 90 days, could raise that money to get, the person they love out of harm's way. And almost to a person, people raise their hands. And it's like, if we're willing to travel at that rate of speed to save someone that we love, I mean, really the question is, what rate of speed are we willing to travel to save ourselves? And so that's what I really ask people to think about is, it's like the woman that, I don't know if you heard the story now, but this woman who fought off a bear with a zucchini. Did you hear about that?
No, I haven't.
So if you ask this woman, 2 or 3 days before this event happened, hey, check it out. You're going to be home. A bear is going to break into your house. It's going to be looking for food. You're going to have your kids with you. Your husband's not going to be there. And the only thing you're going to be able to, defend yourself with is a zucchini. How do you think you're going to do? Well, I'm sure she would just chuckle and say, well, hopefully that won't happen. But also, I'm sure I would be dead. This bear is going to eat me and eat my kids and eat all my food. But somehow she was able to garner up the strength to beat the hell out of this bear with a zucchini and chase the bear out of the house. And so, look, if you're pushed to that brink, boy, what can happen? And so the question is, if you're able to do that sometimes, is that in fact a go-to way of being that you can cultivate more often?
I can't remember who I can attribute the quote to, but they said in the quote that if people were doing what they were capable of doing, they would be astounded with themselves.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
One of the things too and it's a measure of success really when you're on this journey to you, and you're successful just simply by showing up and then finding out, of course, as you say in your book, what your what is. If you could clarify what the what is situation.
Yeah, and you talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of just that whole yes but kind of thing. And the question that I really throw out to people is your what bigger than your but?
Right.
And, obviously I mean that with the one T, but what your what is, and that's only the question that must be answered. What is your what? What is the one thing that your soul is compelled to do? That is your what. It's your unique gift. It's your innate talent. It is that which you would do if no one paid you a cent to do it. It's like, and ultimately that's where you want your life to go. You have to figure out how to get your life to the point where you're living like a thief. And I mean that in a positive way. I mean that from the standpoint of people paying you an extraordinary amount of money to do what it is that you would gladly do for free. It's like you sit there, you cash checks, and you go, man, I can't believe they pay me for this. And so that's the idea, is identify that what and be clear on what is your what, because ultimately when you identify what that is and you begin creating that plan of action and moving forward in a meaningful way with it, that's when you begin to have just an incredible impact not only on your own life, but of course on the lives of those around you.
It was interesting, Steve, as I was reading through your book, Journey to You. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden I had this image of a movie called City Slickers, and I was thumbing through it this morning a little bit, and I was astounded because you actually talk about a scene in City Slickers, and it happened to be the scene that I was reflecting on.
Yeah,
which is when you're about 38, 39 years old. Yeah, y'all come up here, you get knots in your rope 52 days out of the year, 52 weeks out of the year, and you come up here thinking 2 weeks is going to take them out, and you don't get it.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's really profound that I would be thinking about that. You actually feature that in the book, but as you described, that was one of your favorite scenes in the movie, but it's also one of those that you profoundly reflect, why haven't I been fully living who I am and doing what I think I want to do and being who I want to be?
Yeah, and ultimately it doesn't matter how old you are or when you get there, but once you start asking that question, that's when you say, wow, it is absolutely time for me to wake up here, because then that's when you begin to recognize that there must be something more for you out there, and there must be something that you really are compelled and naturally wired to do that you're not pursuing. Otherwise, that conversation doesn't come up. But, look, I've seen literally thousands of movies in my life, and it's just one of those really, rare, sort of profound scenes that stuck with me all of these years. And in that scene, as you were alluding to, Curly Jack Palance is riding horseback with Billy Crystal, and I'll just cut to it, and he says, Billy, well, I'll use their real names, Billy, do you know what the secret of life is? And, of course, that's why Billy Crystal is out there, and he goes, no, what? And Jack Palance holds up his riding glove, and he's got one finger that he's just, he's pointing up and looks at his finger and just looks at Billy Crystal, and Billy Crystal looks at him and says, what, your finger? And, of course, Jack Palance says, no, one thing. You stick to that, and nothing else means bleep.
Yeah.
And, of course, Billy Crystal looks at his own finger now and says to Jack Palance, well, that's great, but what's my one thing? And, Jack Palance looks at him and says, well, that's what you've got to figure out. And then he rides away. And so, look, Jack Palance calls it your one thing. I call it your what. And really, it doesn't matter what you call it. You just got to figure out what it is.
Absolutely true. The book is Journey to You, and our guest today is Steve Olsher. Is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Absolutely. So the website is steveolsher.com. That's SteveOlsher.com. And if what I really want to do is just get people fired up to help those they love, and because it's so everybody knows someone in transition, whether it's someone who's unemployed or someone who's recently retired or just going from military to civilian life, or just really trying to understand what's next. So please go on Amazon. They sell it dirt cheap. Buy the book. Send me an email to steve@steveolsher.com with your receipt, and I will actually send you a free autographed copy for you. Share the other book with somebody else. I'll send you a free autographed copy, and I'll also send you an ebook that you can share with anyone you like for free.
So being who you are, certainly there's no excuses now.
You would think, right?
Journey to You is the book, a step-by-step guide to becoming who you were born to be. Steve Olsher, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
I really appreciate you having me on. Have a great 2011.
You too as well. We also want to wish everybody else a great 2011, our listeners out there, and be sure to join us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50 with a 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter and visit us at our blog as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us, and remember, live your day past halfway.